Some choices are hard, like should you choose McDonald's Buttermilk Crispy Tenders or the Buttermilk Crispy Chicken in our signature crafted recipe sandwiches? Well, guess what? You can't make a wrong choice. It's Buttermilk Love, and that's good news. Speaking of good news, now you can get McDonald's 2-piece Buttermilk Crispy Tenders for just $2 from their $1, $2, $3 menu. Cannot be combined with other offer or combo meal. Prices and participation may vary.
Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive's Employee of the Month, 2 months in a row. Leave a message at the... Hi, Jamie. It's me, Jamie. I just had a new idea for our song about the Name Your Price tool. So when it's like, tell us what you want to pay, hey, 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 and the trombone goes, blah, 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 and you say, we'll help you find coverage options to fit your budget. Then we just all do finger snaps while a choir goes, statements coming at ya, statements coming at ya. Yes? No? Maybe? Anyway, see you at practice tonight. I got new lyrics for the rap break.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Supernatural Substation. This is your episode 4, those of you keeping track, January 26, 2018. I'm Eileen Pastanio, your host. I think I know who's going to be on here tonight, unlike last week. And in the peanut gallery is Bernadine LeBlanc. What's up, Bernadine?
What's up? Man, this month went by quick.
This year is going by quick. Yeah, we were, let me just say at the top of the show, we, earlier this month, we had Laurie McDonald scheduled, and, Joe lost power over there because we were having snow in the South on the Gulf Coast. So everybody wanted to turn a heater on at the same time. So Laurie is going to be joining us, tonight at 9:30. She is an alien abduction, alien abduction researcher, and also she is a clinical hypnotherapist helping to regress patients or abductees to, their event, to help them work through it. So she'll be up at about 20 minutes or so at 9:30, 10:30 elsewhere on the East Coast. But anyway, how's your week since last week?
Well,
in the nutshell, I don't want to hear.
Okay, got held up at gunpoint, lost a family member, and another friend died yesterday. So a couple of funerals to go to. Yeah, a lot going on.
When it rains, it pours. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that about that. I'm glad that that you're okay with the armed robbery event. Crime is just moving into the suburbs and the other cities, and criminals is stupid though for picking on you and your son. And I'm pretty sure and
my niece. Yeah. We all kind of batshit crazy, so he kind of picked the wrong vehicle to block in.
And the police were right there, right at it was parole office. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, you helped take some criminal off the street because he had a rifle in the trunk and a gun in his hand. So I tell y'all, it's getting bad. It's getting bad. But anyway, over in New Orleans, they don't care. They're all fretting about the parades. Oh my God, the parades. The parades for Mardi Gras start tomorrow.
I know. I have a friend on her way down there, and I'm like, be safe.
100% chance of rain. There may be nothing to see. The crew of, the crew of Bilge, which is a boat parade in Slidell. It's earlier in the morning, but then they've got Poseidon in Slidell. And the French Quarter, they got Crew de Vue and Crew Delusion. And those two are they're known as sort of the risque type, trashy, I don't know, drag queen, whatever, sort of eclectic. I don't even think that's the word for it. They're going to be tomorrow night at 6:30, but I don't know because everybody's saying 100% chance of rain. 70 or 100, it doesn't make much difference because the way things are in New Orleans right now, some place is going to flood because they still can't get anything fixed over there because they're cursed. That's why. But those are the parades if anybody's down. And Sunday's supposed to be a little better. They have 4 or 5. I hate parades. I hate Mardi Gras. I'm not worried. I mean, I hate to see people save all year buy their stuff, look forward to getting a ride. I don't like it for that, because I know obviously they put a lot of money into it. Like if you're in one of the big super crews like Bacchus or Endymion, it's $10,000 just in the parade stuff alone, right? Not in your throws. And I mean, it's keep it going all year, especially those families that want to have their daughters and everything to be maids, on the float, or to be picked as the queen of Endymion and all. Cash, you got to have cash.
Wow.
So. And that particular parade, Endymion, started right up the street in the backyard in a garage where I grew up in Mid-City. And my dad, the man, the president, Ed Munez, told my dad, "You should come on, join. He said, "Oh, that ain't gonna be nothing." and he's in heaven, so I know he hears me. So it's like dad's luck again. It's like, I turned into this goo. It's the biggest thing, I mean, it's like it's 10 o'clock at night and the front of it's only reaching, Canal Street or something. It's a big ass parade. And they always have, some celebrity. I don't know because I hadn't kept up with it, but we will know. I'll know later who's grand marshals. You can go look it up on the parade schedule. But anyway, yeah. So there was a momentary chance where I could have been a maid.
Oh yeah.
One of them big headdresses chained to a pole at the top of some flimsy ass float. Yeah, waving.
Oh my goodness.
All night, yeah, and that it would have probably been like 0 degrees. But anyway, I mean, if you haven't seen it, see it, but don't come down here and expect to be safe because they're killing them left and right. It's like a wild, wild west. Anyway, that's my rant on Mardi Gras. But we were talking last week, and we were talking about our this part of our show for each week, and I was thinking about there's some ghosts attached to some of the parades, some of the places where they make the floats and everything. And my cousin Ricardo is the designer for the crew of Mid-City. And they have what they call a den. It's really like a big double warehouse in the city where they store the floats all year. And that's where he works on them. And one year, I don't know exactly how many years ago, but one year, Endymion, the one that I'm speaking of, they have these, they started to get these like triple layer floats. Like there's people on, 3 levels. And they have their big event, the extravaganza, which is where all the celebrities perform and everything in the Superdome. And according to what I heard, one of these, the tractor was trying to pull 3 of these triple level floats. And just like an 18-wheeler that, like wants to jackknife on you, the front one, the guy was able to manage to turn onto the street with the front one, but the last 2, the middle one kind of rocked, but the other one tipped over, really like on 2 wheels. Everybody held on, but this one man fell out. He was like in the middle of the, like the middle of the float. So he fell onto the ground and the float hit him. And I go over, because I used to help Ricky, do some of this stuff and everything, just little stuff. I mean, I'm not an artist at all, but he had the hat from the man that had gotten, if you look, they always wear like these white masks and they'll have different kind of hats on. It's kind of a classic Mardi Gras look. And it was orange and it had blood on it. Anyone who knows my cousin knows that he's like out there and he's macabre, and it doesn't bother him to have a bloody hat around. It didn't really bother me because I knew where it was in the den. But if you're down there at like 3 o'clock in the morning and the wind, it was a windy, rainy night or just one of those windy nights, and the wind whistles through the doors and rattles everything, it can get creepy, especially because it's haunted. And I think it was haunted before they brought this hat into the den. But every year, like right now, they are getting ready to do to have the preview party for the crew, and all the floats should be almost finished by now. It's probably just finishing touches since Mardi Gras is so early. And so in the week ahead or after the preview, they always have a security guard that stays in the den for the week before, or the few days before they're going to ride, and they roll on, I think it's Sunday the 12th. Yeah, so the Sunday before Mardi Gras. So they brought this hat up in there, and it was way in the back, sitting on a stick in the back. And they had a friend of Ricky's named Davey. He was going to stay there late one night. He was the one that was going to stay and watch the den. So, if you go in a float, there's an area where they usually put like the portalette, and door opens, and you can put out your sleeping bag and everything. And this particular year, he doesn't scare easy. I mean, he has like, a studded collar, sharp studs for his, one time I saw him, his little girl had on a diaper and sharp studded, S&M neck choker. I mean, that's Davey. He's not, I used to call him my daughter's bodyguard because he's not scared or anything, but he got scared because it was even happening when we were still in the den. And, we were on one side, I was holding something, I don't know, helping Ricky do whatever. And then we heard Davey yell on the other side of the den. And he came kind of walking around from the floats and was like, I thought one of y'all was over there. And I was like, no. I said, we're here. And he's like, what? And Ricky's like, what's the matter? Well, he saw a man jump from one float to the other. Like, he was he was picking up what Davey was doing, was clearing the decks, of the float so they could put, the crew can come on and put all their bags and their throws and all that. So he was picking up behind Ricky, and and the thing was that, I'm just standing there like zoning out because Ricky's the one doing the work. And I knew what float he was on, but it was like more than one kind of rattled and shook a little bit, and I thought, well, it's just Davey. And then he came running around. He said, I don't know about sleeping in here tonight. I don't know about it. And yeah. And I don't blame him because, that was really kind of creepy. And Ricky said he hadn't seen anything like that until they brought that hat in there, and I'm like, oh, great. You got a ghost from a rival parade in your den, you're lucky it's not a poltergeist. Going to burn everything to the ground. But yeah, it really spooked him because all of us were on one side and he was on the kind of the dark side of it, where the lighting's not that good, and he was creeped out by it because he had to stay there that night too. So, and I think Ricky ended up staying there too because it was just too creepy.
Would you see a shadow jump from the float or a full-on apparition?
A man, he had pants on, and that was it. It's not like a complete shadow, but not a fully manifested apparition either. He saw legs, and he saw like what he thought was an arm, but he saw him jumping from float to float because it's not that far. They're like right next to each other. There's only like a little space because of the space they have. So they put the floats really close when they get him in there, and he just jumped, over whatever. And Davey he was bent over, he picked up, he looked, he saw the guy jump off of the float he was on. That's the thing, it wasn't like, and he knew he was by himself on that float. And then, the first thought is somebody broke in here, but not the creep factor. He showed us he had goosebumps and everything. He was really creeped out. And,
the guy might have been looking for his hat.
Yeah, maybe. And as far as I know, it's still back there. And he can stay there. But there was another, the den is old and the parade is old. And the parade was like 79, 80 years old just a couple of years ago. And the floats are made out of wood. They're wooden framed. And a lot of the wood is, 80 years old, really. I mean, some of the main frame of it, is fine because of the upkeep, but it's old. And before Ricky, there were other people that were in charge of the design, and so there's always been like the age factor. And he would tell me, the den's haunted. But before Davey, there's a bathroom area, and there's like an open area where he would put the tables to do the art and everything. And I was going to the restroom, walked over to the restroom, went in there, came out, and there was a set of footprints, and it started from nowhere, like just on the floor. Like it didn't start at the door, it didn't start from the float area. It started and then it stopped, like right near the door of the restroom. No, it wasn't bare feet. Is there's a barefoot? No, this was like footprints, like shoe footprints.
Oh,
okay. There was barefoot, but they had an explanation. Somebody had paint and stepped in it, so there was an explanation for that. This was just like shoe footsteps, and they weren't there before. That was the thing, because I know they weren't, because we worked in that area. Nobody spilled anything. I knew about the other paint or whatever, so I called Ricky over and I was like, "What the hell is this?" It must have materialized, walked, and now that the footprints won't come off. They're like on cement. It's not paint. It's not burned. It's not anything. It's just there. They start and then they end. And I gotta go. I was like, I'm going home. It's 2 a.m. or whatever. It's like, no. It's like, you take me home. Because it started to get kind of creepy in there, and it's not in the best of neighborhoods anyway. But back then, a few years ago, it wasn't as bad as it is now. But it's really, it can really be creepy. And that particular incident, there was just no explanation. As far as I know, those footprints are still there. He had no explanation. It wasn't any of them that followed me. So I have no idea. And then the last thing that happened to me there, I went to meet Ricky at the den, and he opened the door, but he had his hands full with something. So I just came in and shut the door, and I hadn't been in there in a while. And when I was walking, like between the floats to the work area where he was working, there were my hair was literally like blowing, and there were like, I felt like hands like touching, like just the wind around me, and I'm like, oh my God, so I mean, I'm the big ghost person, right? But I was like, oh my God, and I'm like shuffling, get over by Ricky, and I'm like, oh my God, I said, I feel everything. I was chill because he said, oh, that's just the spirits are happy to see you, and I'm like, oh, okay, okay, now they're touching me enough. But yeah, it's it's creepy and it's old, and it's not the only parade, that has a haunted, location where they're in the warehouse and everything. There's another one, Babylon, that the warehouse is really haunted, to the point where it's like they'll find, floats kind of, vandalized and stuff, and nobody's in there, and they see the, they have the security cameras at that particular den. So there's no explanation for what's going on in there. You can't get into it. Ricky's is a little, but you still can't get into it because he's got like an alarm too. But it's just, I mean, people, these parades have been around forever, and, there's been so many people that come and go on them. Crew members die. I mean, just natural death. They have heart attacks, and people die. They may have been a member all their life, and they loved it so much, that some people have even talked about seeing dead people on the float. In other words, like in photos. I wish I could get my hands on it, but some of them, they're also drunk too. Okay, they're drunk, but they're not so drunk at the beginning of the parade. But there were people in, like the crowds that would recognize somebody, or didn't know that, so and so had died, and saw him on the float, and then found out he was dead, and he wasn't, obviously not participating in body this year. You know what I mean? So it, I mean, it can get creepy. There's another, there was another designer before Ricky, and I can't remember what her name was, but she was a Kern. So Blaine Kern has Mardi Gras World, and he's the real float builder. He's like, he does those mega structures and all, and that's, and he moved Mardi Gras World to the South Shore, or the south side of the lake, or whatever, west side of the river. So it's in a bigger area now. But before that, his sister worked with him on some of his parades, but she did Mid-City too. So there's, Ricky's told me that sometimes he's seen her, but now Ricky is psychic. And he's seen her, and he would be seeing her because he's psychic anyway. I haven't seen it, but I heard that, he had seen her, and I'm pretty sure because he took the foil. Mid-City shtick is that they're the oldest handmade foil parade. It's like not just silver foil, like aluminum foil, but he uses mylar and everything else. But one time when he was stripping a float all the way down of the exterior stuff, on the bottom is the original foil background, real foil from like the 1930s or whatever that is on there, and it covers the old wood. So I mean, you're pulling off somebody's work and then you're putting it back, putting more back, but there's always that background. People don't think about it, like that, what's underneath it. But, these kids go into these floats and get killed or hurt almost every year. And people get shot on the parade routes. It's just, it's like a war zone. But that's a pretty creepy place. In fact, I was talking to him a while back about you and the team coming in there and staying overnight to see. He says, I don't need to know. I know it's haunted. Well, I do too, but it would be nice to get some evidence, or something. Like 3 in the morning, the rattling and the occasional boombox car going by. It can get pretty creepy. So we'll be talking more about that next week. Joe is telling me we have our guest on the line. Laurie, are you there? Hello. I think
this is Laurie.
Hey, Laurie. I'm Eileen Pastanio, and Bernadine is in the background. We're so glad you could join us. Yeah, so glad you could join us. That we had to reschedule with you, but we can't handle snow down here. Snow and cold. So. But it's good to have you on the show. I'm just going to use your bio a little bit to just read a little bit about you. You are a clinical hypnotherapist and UFO abduction researcher, and one of 27 regression therapists listed on the MUFON mental health referral list for abduction regression. You are a scientific consultant to the Research Committee Free, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. You're a board president, for OPUS, Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support, and the founder of the Sacramento Alien-abduction Contactee Support Group in California. You've been a facilitator of a number of experiencer events and a lifelong experiencer herself. And your company, True You Hypnotherapy, has been the winner of Sacramento's Best of 4 years running by promoting mind-body integration through one-on-one sessions, empowerment workshops, and experiencer group events. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read and I'm blind, but we're going to let you tell us the rest of that. You've been on TV. You're an expert, that's been contacted. So I would like to hear later about your own experiences, but I'd like you to just tell us a little bit about how you got into all this and what your experiences are.
Sure. Like I said, I am a lifelong experiencer, and with most lifelong experiencers, it is hereditary, where it runs in the family. And we see that family members, parents, grandparents, aunts or uncles even have had either face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact with an extraterrestrial, or they've seen UFOs. Maybe they even have suppressed memories and have additional experiences that they're unaware of. But we do see that that's one of the commonalities. So as it turns out, my mother was an experiencer. She wasn't a lifelong experiencer, but she did have her UFO experiences in her youth.
Mm-hmm. And then you began to have them as well?
Well, actually, her experiences happened during puberty, so right around the 12-year-old mark, and then not again until she was pregnant with one of her children. She had 9 months of pretty intense alien abduction experiences, although in retrospect, when you speak to her, she's 78 now, she doesn't say that they were abductions. She just refers to them as when she went with them. So she doesn't really feel like it was against her will, but at the same time, she doesn't really feel like it was something that she could stop or prevent. And so during that 9 months, extraterrestrials would take her, and she couldn't tell if she was, on a craft or in some type of a facility. And they would do a plethora of examinations, but it wasn't until she was fully 9 months pregnant that she had gone out of the house one morning and was in the backyard sitting in a lounge chair, and then just out of nowhere there were 2 extraterrestrials, one on either side of her, roughly about 4 feet tall. They were pale in color. They didn't have the really large eyes that would be typically known as the grays. They had rounder eyes. She said that they began to float through the apple orchard, and her feet were not touching the ground. They floated through the apple orchard to the center where the tractors turn around. There's a clearing. There was a UFO hovering there, and just instantly she was in the ship, and she said that her feet were cold. She knew that she was on the craft and she could physically feel it, and she became distorted because the craft appeared so much larger from the inside than it did from the outside, and so it gave her some type of vertigo. They continuously stressed to her that they weren't trying to hurt her because she did get scared. They told her that they were only interested in the baby, and they would examine her. They gave her an implant. She said she heard this loud popping sound inside of her head. She said she could smell them, and they smelled absolutely horrible. And she was terrified. She was 24 years old. This was 1963 in Ontario, Canada. It was fall. And she had told her doctors, her gynecologist, she told her husband, she told people that this was happening, and they were like, don't talk about that. They're going to lock you up, put you in an insane asylum or under some type of psychiatric care. You may lose your other children. And so, she shut up. She didn't talk about those experiences for 50 years. It wasn't until 4 years ago, she saw me on a TV show called Topic UFO, and she contacted me. Now, after she gave birth to me, she really didn't keep me for very long. She kept me for as long as she could, but she had issues bonding, and I reminded her of things that frightened her, things that she couldn't talk about. And so I was made a ward of the court and put up for adoption, but was not adopted. So,
Wow. That's
meanwhile,
dramatic.
25, it's a little dramatic, but then for 25 years, I'm doing this extraterrestrial research. I'm a hypnotherapist. I'm running the support groups, and just out of nowhere, we get this phone call, and, this is your mother. I'm like, what? But yeah, it was a little shocking. And then when she began to tell the story, in fact, that's how she started the conversation. She said, I need to tell you the story of your birth. And she proceeded to tell me the story. She said that right up until she heard the popping in her head, they gave her further exams, again, just emphasizing their interest in the baby. And then the next thing she remembers, she was laying out in the yard away from the back door. She was bleeding both vaginally and from the nose, and she was in full labor, and she was calling out for help, and no one heard her. Her husband didn't wake up. Nobody heard her. Eventually, a neighbor getting ready to go into work heard her. And he came and roused the household, and they took her to the hospital, and then I was born later that day.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
It's pretty something.
That's a story.
So her story was pretty limited to the pregnancy, and it is rather dramatic, and the fact that she was unable to speak about it for so long.
Well, it was taboo back then.
It certainly was. It was definitely taboo. So,
and it's a good way to get put in a mental institution too back then. Now they're a little more sympathetic, but back then they were like shock treatments or something, there you go.
Yeah, it's true. They definitely tried to shut her down. They even told her at one point that it was hormonal.
Gee.
We have a lot of that going on.
Hormonal. And how old was she? Like 24, 25 and she was pregnant? Yeah, maybe baby hormones, but no. Dean, I know you got some questions, so come on in.
I'm sure she held that, with her for a while till she just had to tell you. I'm sure it bugged her until she really had to tell. You know how some people, you don't see for a long time, and they just have something they have to tell you, and it's going to bother them until they do. Kind of like if a spirit has a message for somebody, they're going to bug you and bug you and bug you until you get that message to that person. I'm sure she held on to that, for a while. But my question is, did she say whenever the extraterrestrial spoke with her, was it telepathy? Through telepathy?
It was, yes. It was telepathy. That's how they communicated everything with her, was telepathically. And, after she contacted me, I was doing a TV show called Experiencers, and the producer was Jim O'Connell, and the show hadn't aired yet. It was still in the production phase. And I called him up and told him that, I got this amazing phone call from my mother, who I don't really know at all, and she told me this great story, and I'm wondering, I asked him, can we maybe bring her on the show and let her tell her story and give her an opportunity? She's held it in for 50 years. And so he agreed that this was a good idea, and so I got them together on the phone, and they spoke all that summer, and they made arrangements for her to do the show. The next phone call I got was from Canada, and they told me to get home immediately, that my mother had suffered a major brain aneurysm that was followed by a stroke, which left her unable to speak.
Oh my gosh.
Do you think it was from the implant in her head?
Or the aliens that she...
Yeah, that they used that to shut her down, maybe?
I'm going to be honest with you, that definitely crossed my mind, because it just seemed so predictable on one hand, if somebody did need to stop her. And so, I did get there. She survived the surgery, and she's been in speech therapy. But, of course, she wasn't able to do the show. So that September, the show promo started to air, and the show was going to air in 7 days. And then maybe you read in the newspaper or on the web that Jim O'Connell, producer of TV show Experiencers, died mysteriously in his sleep. And so the show was canned. No, I'm absolutely not kidding. You can verify all of this.
I can see they not wanting her to tell the public, but they allowed her to tell you. She was able to tell you everything.
I'm going to tell you, I sensed it anyway. Whether she was ever going to vocalize it, I did sense something. In fact, I had sort of dreams or glimpses of it, almost from her perspective, which is kind of weird. But, last October, just a few months back, I was speaking at the a conference in Detroit, Michigan, a consciousness expansion conference. And I invited my mom because I was going to be sharing her story there. And so she had her moment to to be validated and have her story told. And so I feel that, she's cleared that now, and she's spoken her truth, and that she can sort of close that chapter entirely and move on.
Did you ever get a chance to regress her?
No, all of her memories were fully conscious. In fact, she journaled. She kept a journal so that she would remember everything the way it was. And yes, all of her memories were conscious. And a lot of people are, as mine are.
Mm-hmm. And you stated that it runs in the family.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think they target certain families for that?
I do. I think that they're looking for a specific either frequency vibrationally through the DNA coding that can either hold an extraterrestrial imprint, or that it could possibly be simply a tagging for a hybridization program to procreate the hybrid of the ETs with the human genome. But I also know that during the abduction phenomena, that they simulate the sleep state by messing with the theta and the delta brain waves and making us think we're asleep. And so just like in a dream, you don't question what's happening and you just go with the flow. And since they're able to do that either telepathically or through other ways of technology, psychotronics and radionics are both ways to do that, or even we have the technology to do that. So since they can do that.
We have a drug called Versed that they use in procedures, medical procedures. And you don't remember, what you're doing, but you're actually speaking to the doctor.
Yeah, it's sort of like a twilight anesthesia or something like that, where they can interact, but you don't remember any of it.
Right.
That's right.
Laurie, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We're saying they're simply suppressing the beta brain waves, the conscious critical mind, and allowing the unconscious mind to become responsive. And so just like when somebody drinks way too many tequila shooters, maybe once, no, okay. So just like if somebody has too good of a time and drinks too much alcohol, and they black out and they go through all night karaoke singing and driving and going out to restaurants with no recollection. They interact with people, they make phone calls, they have no memory, just like that.
That's wild. And that's true. Although I just completely black out and fall down and wake up usually on a bathroom floor or something. I don't drink anymore since I got out of my wayward youth. But I was going to say that I was listening to your story, and I kind of, they interfered with her telling it publicly, but it seems like they waited until you were old enough and involved enough to understand what she was saying for her to, to impart that to you. It's like she might have been waiting and holding this information in. And then when, you took that path, she was able to tell, her story. And as you said, get validation, et cetera,
I think that feels right to me because in my early 30s, I had quite an amazing experience, a type of visitation. And they did tell me, among other things, that it would be in my 50s that I would know more.
Wow. And then you do. That's wild.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think? How would you classify? Is this paranormal? I mean, we've talked about we've talked with other, like Nick Redfern and all that. And for me, from my perspective, I've kind of always held the opinion that alien abductions and aliens and the experiences that people are having right now in our modern times are really experiencing the same thing that, let's say, the Celtic societies experience with fairy mounds and, seeing the sprites and the fairies and the elves. Um, so in other words, it's something that's always been around here with us in here with us in this system, and it just reacts differently as we grow and modernize. We begin to, it's the only thing we can relate to. So it's all now kids. It's all, yeah, the black-eyed kids, the space, but there's parallels, in that. So so it's super, really not paranormal, it's supernatural, but what's your opinion about that?
Well, what I think is that we have multiple vibrational frequencies through different dimensions. And that if we look at the dimensions like a loaf of bread, each slice is just one frequency higher or lower than the one between it. And so it's very simple for these to kiss or flux or bounce off of each other, and dimensions bleed into each other. There's been a fluxing since the beginning of time because the universe is expanding. So there's always been what people classify as paranormal activity. The difference is that some of the dimensions are matter, manifested like us, and some are antimatter, more in spirit. Then there's sort of the in-between. Now, depending on the level of consciousness that the entity has, that shows you where they're from. If it's a lower vibrational entity and it's interacting, then that could be supernatural, and it could be a discarnate human trapped in the bardo, and they become poltergeist or create other issues until their consciousness settles down and they stop trying to escape that realm, and then they have to follow the appropriate protocol. But on the other hand, now, that's more in the antimatter. The other dimensions, some of them are very physical, just like ours. And so they're coming through and visiting. Now, some may be more advanced than us, and even some of the spirit world now can be, or some of the universal energies can be recreated with technology using sound, or trying to do something that CERN is doing by creating the particle collider and smashing atoms together. You are taking the risk of literally creating a rip in the universe. And so things are going to bleed through. But as the universe expands, think of a balloon blowing up, becoming a little bit thinner. It's like the veil is thinning, and we're able to see now the other dimensions.
Yeah, CERN worries me. CERN worries me a lot, okay, because my background is in, occultism, and I know what's out there. And, I've seen people do rituals and bring these things in, and there have been some great practitioners that have encountered stuff, but by and large, the angels are basically trying to keep all that out, so CERN being very very supernatural, very magical, Shiva destroy the world and recreate it and all that, they're looking to get it in here. And I know you've heard of the watchtowers. They're looking to pull those down and get that in here. And I'm just saying that, everybody believes, but that's my theory. Now, we had Lloyd Auerbach say, oh, it's nothing like that, it's just a particle, whatever. But I think it's more, and I think there's reason to be concerned. Do you, from your experiences, think that there's reason to be concerned?
Absolutely. I think that they're taunting people. They're saying they're trying to, originally, they were trying to, now remember, CERN's been around since about 1953. They are the entity that created the World Wide Web. CERN was very active in 1953 after the Philadelphia Project, I believe in 47, somewhere around that time.
Yeah, I think so.
And they're working at the sort of the same thing, moving through space or time or cloaking or basically transporting one material thing to another place without being seen. And CERN was involved in that back then. And so what they tell us and what they really do, but if you saw the opening to the Guidard tunnel.
Oh, I saw it. Oh my gosh.
It's a satanic ritual.
It
and
is.
So you can magically open portals through chants or sounds or repetition. It's been done before. I certainly believe that. That's in a way, but now technology can, do that without having to go through all of the motions that the practitioners would have had to before. Now, CERN's scary. When you go visit them in Switzerland or France, whichever border you're on, you can enter as a tourist, and they'll bring you through there, and they give you this little passport. It's kind of like a little guide map. And on it, they have these different icons talking about antimatter and so forth. And so they showed a picture of Darth Vader near the antimatter. And then there's a little drawing of the Wicked Witch in Snow White. And what it seems to me that each one of the little drawings that they use to help explain some of the Mandela effects that people talk about. And so between, shoving that in your face, taunting, and then doing satanic rituals and creating all sorts of, propaganda even on the 4chan. It's quite interesting. CERN has.
It's transcending everything, and it's so insidious. And there are so many layers on layers, of what you see, and then what, if they're releasing, or they're comfortable with us knowing the amount that we know, meaning the world, people knowing the amount we know about what they're doing, then that means they've already accomplished that. And what they're working on is something entirely, further down the road than that, It scares me. Exactly. I mean, it really does, because they don't know they really don't know what the hell they're doing. I mean, they know the signs.
What would the goal be? Why recreate what it would be like after the Big Bang Theory? Why?
Eternal life, why? Immortality? I don't know.
It just doesn't seem like something we need to be doing. Let's take all of that money and all of those wonderful quantum physicists and to put them to work on something better.
Right. And so one more thing, I just wanted your opinion of it. I mean, where does abduction and just, at the base level experiences, the natural humans that are having these experiences, where does that fit in that great, are they angry? Some people say that the aliens that we're encountering are really like either guardians or stewards, and they held the argument, like, if we get out of hand, they're going to come, like in the day the earth stood still. I don't know whether that's true or not, but where does that all fit in this seriously occult Illuminati practice, whatever, just a tunnel through a mountain, but it's in hell, right? Or whatever. I mean, where does that all fit in?
Well, actually, I imagine that the majority of the cases that are considered UFO and alien are not extraterrestrial so much as they are really interdimensional. I think that they already know that. I think that when we're looking at truly extraterrestrial cases, and the beings that we're referring to then fall under the category of celestial beings, and this would be, if you're looking out into space, it would be past the Milky Way, beyond the big Virgo cluster, into that huge arm of expansive space. The vibrations in space then begin to change at a much higher frequency. And the celestial beings there, these would be the entities that manifest in hues of violet, of plasmic violet, and more angelic. And so I think what people see as extraterrestrials now are simply interdimensionals, and that we're really leaving ourselves open for mass manipulation. I don't think that a lot of the cases where people say, oh, my ET told me this, I'm not even sure they're talking to an ET. I think that a lot of times they may be talking to an interdimensional being or something else altogether. And sadly, we see in many cases that come to the point of regression that what's really going on is some type of a possession. Now, when we say my ET and we start claiming, oh, Pleiadian, and I'm a star seed from Arcturian or this or that or the other thing, people need to understand that by claiming them as family or them claiming us, that's another way of saying possessing. And we just go running blindly to it, open arms, take me. It seems that any higher intelligence wouldn't have made these devastating mistakes they think we're about to. You see, all of the messages are the same. We're here to prevent you from doing what we did to ourselves. And if you go this way or that way, we're going to stop you. I don't really think I can buy into that too much. I think that there is only one path for the human being, and that is a path of unfoldment towards ascension. And that comes through the soul more than anything. And a lot of people don't know even what a human is, let alone an alien. But human, hue is that ancient word we use for light. And in modern days, we use the word hue to measure the depth and the saturation of light in hues. Man is short for manifestation, to come into the physical or to be embodied, and a human is a light embodied entity. And when we really know what we are and understand the human experience, when we understand that we're light embodied and that this is a transitional, very short time, we're not going to be around for as long as most trees.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we have to then really use that short time span to focus the energy on the human experience, not stuck in what I see as survival mode, which is, getting, money to get a house, a bigger house or a bigger car or nicer clothes or all of these status quos. And all of these things are outside of the human. They're all external motivators, but the true path, of course, is inside. And so for humans to think that they're going to be saved by anything other than themselves is a grave error. That trust has to come from us, that we do have the opportunity to self-correct, which is the name of my next book, to self-correct, 5 steps to personal empowerment, to take all of your paranormal or extraterrestrial or interdimensional experiences and use them to expand your consciousness, to understand the multidimensionality of the human soul, to see your true place in the universe and propagate that unfolding, that it's a human experience just as much as it is a ET experience, and the emphasis has to be on humanity.
I agree. Dean, you want to come in?
Yeah, I have a question. You had mentioned the smell of the ETs, and I wanted to ask, on a supernatural note, paranormal note, whenever we have a case and one of the the problems they're having is the smell, and they're having all these bad things happen in the home and they feel it's demonic. Well, one of the things we look for is that smell. Now, I know that when a human soul, we're energy once we leave our body. Do you feel that the ETs have the same thing when they leave their bodies, when they die? I know you say they live a long time, but when they do die, do they not have a soul, like we do? And could it be one of them versus a demon that we're smelling?
Well, okay, first off, the ETs that have been reported to me, and I'm sure there are others that are different, but what has been brought to my attention is their smell is putrid. It's horrible. It's like rotting cheese and moldy cardboard, where a demon might smell more sulfuric, or if it's a ghost or a discarnate human, then maybe more flowery, or if it's a relative and maybe your dad wore, I don't know, a particular aftershave, you'll smell that. So smell is very important here, but there's a distinct difference between the smell of what have been considered negative entities or demons.
But do you feel that ETs can come in spirit form?
Well,
to our dimension?
I think they can project that. Okay, some ETs have a spirit, but I don't think that the Greys, for instance, do. I think that they're at a point in their evolution where they no longer freely procreate. They have been cloned like a thinned out photocopy, where their essence is nothing but a cheap imitation. Hence the harvesting of genetics from the human genome to create these hybrids. I think that that's possibly their second chance in recapturing the essence of soul. I think that's one of the reasons that.
Yeah, to me, a hybrid would have a soul because they're half human.
Absolutely.
But I have to say something, though, on the smell. The smell of drains, the smell of putrid, rotting meat, that is associated with demons. It's associated with the higher demons, the great demons, the ones that, that live on the opposite side of the tree, that it takes a lot of hard work to get in touch with them or bring them into our reality. But it's, it's a well-known indicator that it's a true demon when you begin to smell the rotting meat, the rotting flesh. That's what I've been listening to you, and that's why I believe that these are demonic manifestations or inhuman, discarnate. They could be angels that have been here. Everybody says the fallen angels. It could be the spirits of those angels who lost their physical form and lost their abilities. But you can smell, I don't know, different kind of things. But if you're smelling, and sulfur, usually when they depart somewhere, you're going to smell that smell. But manifestation, you've got to deal with like an open grave smell. Because they are, they're iniquity embodied. So I don't trust, because look, Aleister Crowley, his angel Aiwass, and then Lamb, who imparted the book of the law to him, he drew them. And he drew them just like you're describing, the big head, the slanted, not the big eyes, that slanted eyes, barely a nose, and just a little slit for a mouth. And he was inside a pyramid talking to this thing. So it just so happens that, now it boomed right after that in the 1940s. And this is what we're seeing too. People are encountering what he encountered. So right away, I don't trust them. I trust the people that they're encountering, but I don't trust what those things are. And like you're saying, they could make us believe they're anything, really.
They come like a thief in the night. Now, if they were to come during the day, knock on your front door,
you wouldn't let them in.
Yeah,
well, if they don't. Right, no, yes, and that's the thing. We have to be very careful in any entity contact. There needs to be a protocol that has to be followed so we can identify what type of being we are encountering. I'm right now have just received some footage of some entity. Now, the young woman has a security system, and when the motion detector goes off, the security light comes on and the camera begins to record. And the clip shows a very large, almost caped, very dark silhouette of a humanoid outside of the window where there is nothing there. And it's on the film. And so during a session, we were talking about some different colored lights. I had just casually mentioned that a lot of people say that sometimes when I'm speaking, they see blue columns of light either beside me, or people say they see blue light. And so we just happened to mention that. Well, then her security camera came on in the other room and filmed a blue light coming into the room. And then her cat's coming out from underneath something. You know, one walks into the light, lays on its back, and sort of surrenders and becomes gentle and soft and receptive. So it's, you know, I'm actually going to take this film, this video, and I'm going to send it to OPUS, and we're going to have a look at it and see what we can do. But there is some smells associated with this too, but nothing as rancid as what we're hearing. And often too, it's what the people are experiencing. They're hearing voices telling them to do things to hurt themselves.
Yeah, that's spirit invasion. But let me just shift to the actual the regression and stuff that you do. What you're describing is, I mean, it's frightening to me, and I never went through it, and I'd be really sympathetic to anybody who did. When you regress people, are you trying to help them through this? I mean, it all sounds traumatizing. You know, they stink, they look like demons, they look like something Aleister Crowley was talking about or whatever. And they may be a person who believed that they were some sort of a star child, and that, you know, then they finally encounter the thing. And it's, you know, some supernatural negative entity or whatever. Does that come up? And are you working through that with them in order for them to get on the other side of that? What role does regression play?
Yeah. It certainly isn't the intention of the session. And when that does come up, absolutely, we hold that energy and work through it until it's resolved. Absolutely. So sometimes the entity will speak, and the subject will tell me what they're saying or doing, you know, and there are some pretty horrible things. The entity sometimes will cuss me out and call me names and scream at me. One recently asked, who the hell do I think I am? And, you know, from a very calm state, and that's my nature, I just said, really, more importantly, who do you think I am? And I think that confused the entity a little bit. I think that they're used to getting a reaction, and maybe not mine, which is really, I'm in a state of equanimity during a session. I'm very calm, very in control of everything in my environment. I feel like I'm often on like super scan alert. Even regular sessions, you know, for smoking cessation or weight management, you know, I have that same higher energy. I sort of tune in and scanning, can feel things, energy shifting in people. You know, even the negative stuff, it's really not all that bad. You know, these negative entities spewing nonsense and, you know, knocking things over, whatever. You know, I'm a mother. I've seen a temper tantrum before, all right? You know, I'm not going to go running, screaming. I have highly intelligent children who both have had temper tantrums. You know, they're in their 30s now, but both have had temper tantrums at one point. So I'm not really, you know, that impressed with some entity freaking out. You know, I'm really not that impressed. So I think that with the right energy, with the right intention, it can be worked through. I'll admit that there have been cases where I've had to call in professional experts whenever I feel that that's necessary. So I certainly wouldn't want to create any additional trauma for the person.
For the individual. What you're describing, though, again, is the hallmark of attachment, spirit attachment, and like you say, possession or oppression. And, Dean and I, we lecture a lot on the supernatural dangers of all of this, this paranormal research that, people have gotten into this, this sort of quasi field of interest or whatever, or study. We talk about it because, there's what they're investigating, they label it all paranormal, but they're investigating the supernatural realm, and the supernatural realm is full of dangers to humans. You're describing some of them. I'm describing, it's just, and there's a myriad of how many that you can encounter, but the actual resistance and the attacking, verbally or whatever, in my experience, in our experience, that indicates either, a negative discarnate human, or, an entity, multiple entities, that have taken control of the person involved through whatever way.
That invitation.
Yeah, and you're a star child, and you're my. They'll appear as whatever you want them to be. You want them to be St. Jude, there they are. Oh, Uncle Joe. Oh, it's you, Uncle Joe. It's just so duplicitous. I guess what I'm getting at is I have a problem with everybody trusting in this, in their experience. I mean, how do you know? Not you, but the general you. How do you know you're an indigo child? How do you know you're a star seed? How do you know this? And how do you know it's not just the same, the same entities that have been doing this since we all got locked in here in this reality, with God? It's like,
well,
so how do they differentiate? Because everything you're telling me is supernatural.
Yeah, that's why there must be a protocol, so that anybody doing any of the work can clearly see that, hey, this is not the behavior of an extraterrestrial. This is the behavior of either a poltergeist, a discarnate entity, or some level of demonic behavior. So once that protocol, and I have written a protocol through a line of questioning to help determine for other people who they're dealing with, because listen, look at the person who is hearing these things or having these experiences, and they get a voice in their head, and all of a sudden it's telling them that they're from some other star system, and I'm your star family, and I'm your true family. And that's one of the things that they say, I'm your real mom and dad. It's what, I hear lots of that, the children who have what are still classified as extraterrestrial interactions, say that the ETs tell them that they're the real parents. I mean, come on. They can't know us that well without thinking that that's not going to screw us up on some level. I mean,
yeah, that's terrible.
Doctors will just medicate you.
Yeah, right. Yes, they will. They'll medicate the kids, What's wrong? We need to get away from that too, but I mean, it seems terrible. I know that they'll pray. I know they pray on, but it's casting it all in sort of through New Age eyes. I guess that's a real buzzkill. When your experiences, you're someone experiencing this, and then they're telling you stuff that turns out to be just a complete lie, and you only have a split-second realization before they're either in you or on you, and you're in deep kimchi with it. That's I think that's cruel, and the cruelty and the pain and the things that these people experience, it's not a good thing. It's not. It's just not. It can't be, because if you should be feeling okay with it. You should know in your gut that it's okay, and if you don't, then it's the fight or flight. But that's just my opinion.
We really have to start looking at, like, really, where are we at historically, or through our collective consciousness expansion or the evolution of humanity? Where are we really at when we have this vast amounts of people, millions and millions of people worldwide having these types of experiences. You know, all over now there are support groups and places to get help. There's just a million paranormal investigation teams out there these days.
I know. It's a self-replicating monster is what it is, you know, and only a smidgen of them know what they're doing, you know. There's the really,
I realize,
you know.
Oh yeah, they're all running around out there with tape recorders trying to collect EVPs, not knowing what to do or what it's all about. And I applaud their enthusiasm once again, but there's protocols that have to be done. This is legitimate when it's happening, and it affects people, and it can disrupt a person's core belief system. It can cause mental distress.
It can cause people to commit suicide and stuff. I mean, seriously, because if they've been, you know, years in a cocoon of, you know, telling themselves, or, you know, they're going by their feelings and everything, it can be, and I imagine that this comes up in your regression, you know, sessions with people, that their reality is totally stripped away. And so what do you do? What do they do after that happens? Oh, that's my dog. You'll hear her barking. But what do they do after they realize, through you, you know, that it's either A or B or whatever, but that a lot of it has been, you know, so what do you do to help them through that? And what do they do when this is out of their lives, you know?
Well, what we do is we begin to fortify the different aspects of the psyche into a fully integrated understanding of the experience, which puts the person in a place of personal empowerment where they don't feel manipulated any further. They've developed skills and tools to prevent further interaction if that's their desire. And then we begin to understand, well, this is what happens. There comes a point where you have to change your reality. You have to accept or deny the existence of non-human beings. Once you begin to accept the existence of non-human entities, your reality has changed. Your reality might be different than that of your neighbors now. And with that, you have to begin the steps of self-development, self-education, and learning where you're at in your understanding. And it's an unfolding now. It's best to surround yourself with the people who are going to be able to help support you through this. And that's where hypnotherapy and other types of therapy are very effective. You know, it's a mind-body thing. So if a person is having hypnotherapy sessions or any sessions, I also recommend that they do a little body work, get some good massages, really release, or, well, really, I don't like to use the word release, but to let go of any blocked energy. Well, release, I'm very conscientious of the words I use, and the word release or to release energy in that context is wrong, because we don't want to release it. We want to let it go. Release means it will come back in another form, and that's not the intention. And so we have to use the appropriate word to get the appropriate results. You know, you release a car, you sign a new contract, you release an apartment, but you don't release energy, because it's going to come back in another form.
Right. Jean, I'm pitching it to you.
I wanted to ask you about the aquatic ETs. I know we hear a lot about, you know, the ones in space, but we don't hear very much about the ones underwater.
Right. Now, so what we've gained is that the Anunnaki from Nibiru at one point came to the planet, and then some of them went underwater. They were referred to at that point as the Naga. The Naga are these half amphibious, half humanoid beings that live in their own environment, in bases almost. I don't want to use the word base as in reference to the military, but in their own places under the sea. And I was on a remote island called Koh Rong Samleon off the coast of Cambodia in the South China Sea. And I was there for 3 months this year, and I talked to the fishermen there. You know, these people have never been to school. They don't have any education. What they do know is the sea and the night sky. And they tell me that there's these orbs of light that come from underneath the water, come up, and then go up, shooting off into the sky. So they're highly credible because they have no motivation. They don't have TV. They're not being influenced on anything. They're telling experiences. So, you know, you learn a lot from hearing people. But yeah, so there could be Naga underneath. And Lake Titicaca in Peru, there's so much activity of craft coming out from under the ocean and flying off into the sky that the indigenous people are just completely non-pulsed by it. To them, it's like another bus going by.
I guess.
Do they not have, like, I know you said they've never been to school, so I'm assuming they don't have the technology to film things like that.
Well,
right, no. They're fishermen, and they've had a fishing vessel that their family has used for a very long time. And they go out and they fish and they do the same thing. I'm serious. This is such a remote island. And I got very sick when I was there. I came down with jungle fever. Half the island had a fever. There's no doctors. There's no electricity from 11 in the morning until 5 at night. You know, the hottest time of the day, you're sweltering with fever. You know, it's very remote. I was literally sleeping on pallets that were stapled together with a thin mat over them, and with giant lizards and spiders crawling all around my mosquito.
Yeah, not somewhere where I want to know. But it's somewhere where they have they don't know anything about that, you know, what they're describing to you. They don't know how the outside world looks at it. They just know their experiences, and they have no reason to fake it or lie, you know, or embellish it in any way. This is right. This is just what they're experiencing, and they're telling you.
That's right. And it's quite interesting that obviously they're, even though, you know, they're phrasing, their language is different, and their approach in describing things, a light coming out and going off into the sky is pretty straightforward.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So without any labels, I guess they have no labels. They don't label the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They just describe this is that, and sometimes that happens.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's perfect. You know, I mean, because they're not going to get paid $1 million for some story, or they're not going to be on TV next week, or, you know, so I have to, you know, when Shakespeare wrote, there are stranger things in heaven and earth than, you know, are dreamt of. It's true. You know, especially the sea, now that we're just talking about it, but 95% of the ocean is unexplored. You know, that scares me, frankly, you know, because there's something big, there's some big things down there, you know. So, you know,
right, with just unimaginable depths. Right. There could be portals. There could be all sorts of things. Yes, we don't know. It's very interesting. Well, we do know that there's mysterious places, there, like the Bermuda Triangle, where the magnetism runs amok. There's a couple of places that are very much like that, in different seas. So, yeah, the sea is very interesting, very threatening on one hand, based on its power, and of course what we don't really understand or know. We do have to imagine.
I've seen some satellite, Google Earth shots with these big things that they say it's not a school, it's not a whale, or a big old chunk of fish, or there's something, and it's like, oh no, it's like there's nowhere to go. I was like, oh my god, I just don't want this something, if it was Godzilla, I wouldn't mind it, right? But it's like I don't need some Leviathan coming up in my neighborhood. You know what I mean? It's like, God, why haven't y'all looked into that other 95%? But Joe is telling us we got about 5 minutes left. I wanted to just ask really quickly. That's my dog in the background, y'all. Just about your the organizations and the work that you do, and then if anyone has need of contacting you, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, you can get in touch with me through opusnetwork.org, or you can get a hold of me at info@truehypnotherapy.com, or just go to True Hypnotherapy on the web and go through the form submission that way. You can get a hold of me through the Sacramento alien abduction. Actually, you can just Google my name, and they'll give you my phone number, and I'll say right now, it's 916-266-3964. Call the office. Somebody will get back to you, and we will take you seriously.
That's exciting. Awesome. I mean, that you're doing so much good and you're doing so much research, for helping people. That's just great. And if I see one, I'll let you know. I only and I have had one unexplainable experience, and I'll just very quickly tell you. We were at a drive-in theater when I was about 10 years old, and I'm from New Orleans, so it was warm, and they would my mother would lay a blanket out, and we would have one of the speakers so we could listen, next to the car. And I was laying down on my back, and I was just looking at the stars, and there was this group of stars, like way up there, moving together across the sky. And while I looked at it, it went from an oval to a square to a triangle, and then back to an oval again. And I didn't tell anybody because nobody would have believed me anyway, but I've never forgotten that, that just, it did something. Stars just did something that they shouldn't do. So that's like my only real life encounter with. And frankly, I don't want another one. I don't want a close, quote unquote, close encounter with anything. So I'm not that big of a chicken, but really I just don't want a gray or black-eyed children at my door or something. Hey, have the Men in Black ever shown up? That's one question I wanted to ask you. Have you ever had any Men in Black show up?
No, I mean, we've had somebody shot out the windows of 2 out of 3 of our vehicles, vandalized the third one. We carved the word psycho on my front door here in the neighborhood. We've had a couple of low-level nuisance incidents like that, but nothing really that would be considered MIBs. But I have had my own face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact with both a gray extraterrestrial or interdimensional being, as well as a reptilian. So it's just being able to handle yourself, not freak out, have no fear. That's really the best advice, is fear not, stay in control.
Yeah, that's it. And that's it in paranormal research, or, in occultism too. And in life, get to keep control.
Yeah,
well,
and in life.
That was a good idea. Like we all just came up with it. Well, thank you so much for being our guest tonight. It was really enlightening. And Dean, you got anything else?
No, I hope we can get you back sometime this year.
And Laurie, you said you have a book. You have a book coming out soon. What is the name of your book?
The Extraterrestrial Interference, and then another book called Self-Correct, 5 Steps to Personal Empowerment. I also do Divine Summoning Goddess Retreats. We have one coming up. If you want to check our website at summoninggoddessretreats.com, it's this June in Northern California. It's also a personal empowerment for women only.
Okay, awesome. Cool. All right. Well, thank you again, Laurie. You have a great weekend, and we'd love to have you back on if you're up to it and you want to join us again. Great. Well,
Absolutely.
thank you again.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Good night.
Thank you,
Thank
Laurie.
you.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good
Bye for now.
Oh, right. Well, everybody probably thinks I'm just a big scaredy cat, but I'm not. It's just that I don't want a UFO. I've had enough encounters. I don't need aliens and, little green men.
Extra people.
Extra stuff. Like I don't have extra, it's like I got enough with the demons and the ghosts and whatever that I know of. I don't need you showing up on my lawn, it's creepy. But I tend toward the the idea that it's always been here interacting with us, but it's just different. Do you hear my lovely little dog in the background? That must mean it's time to go to a break. I mean, that's what we're going to do. You're listening to the Supernatural Substation on the United Public Radio Network and Valkyrie chewing on her ball. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody, to the Supernatural Substation. I'm Eileen Castanio, and I'm with my co-host, Bernadine LeBlanc. Say hey.
Hey.
We just finished talking to Laurie McDonald. What do you think? It was pretty interesting. Yeah, it was very interesting. I had a lot of questions to ask her. I don't know if you got to ask all the ones that you know, that you had. But she mentioned that, I was surprised that she mentioned the CERN opening, the opening of that big hadron, actually the tunnel, I'm sorry, the tunnel that's near CERN, because if you look back, you go look at it on YouTube, that is
where do we find that on YouTube?
It's, I can't remember the tunnel. You can just put in tunnel opening. I'll do it right now while I'm on YouTube.
How do you spell CERN?
CERN is CERN.
Okay.
But anyway, anybody who has not seen it really should go and try and look at that, because as Laurie was saying, and as I already knew, it's like serious occult ritual. Illuminati watcher, he looked at it. There's some other guys that always, that basically pick out the the less obvious symbols and a lot of the stuff that we're hearing. But she and I are on the same page with that. These idiots are out there trying to punch a hole in our reality, and it's just it's not a good thing.
It's unnecessary.
Yeah, it is. And it's a big, let me see, it comes up as CERN tunnel ceremony, and it's like an hour. There's one 59 minutes and 35. Full bizarre demonic Gotthard tunnel opening ceremony, satanic New World Order Illuminati. But it's creepy, and it goes through a whole thing. They have the Scarlet Woman. They have Babylon the whore. They have pregnancy. The Babylon comes out pregnancy. They have this guy, sort of like the master of ceremonies is Pan the goat. He has goat legs and he's a man up. The whole thing is just so blatantly occult, and everybody, and then they're all saying, oh, it's just, it's just for fun and just for, that's not fun. That's nightmare inducing stuff. Okay. When you look at it, it's an hour, but you can skip through it, but it's unsettling, and you think, oh, well, it's just Switzerland, but no. These people really don't do anything that they don't think through. So this was a big ceremony, and it was a big occult ritual, and they are working on CERN as a gateway. They deny it, but their original, and Lloyd Auerbach talked about it when he was on, and he's got his opinion, but they're not pure scientists doing this. And at the very least, they're not getting their money from pure scientists. They're getting it from occultists and practitioners that are really into this ritual. So if you Google CERN, CERN tunnel ceremony, it'll come up with a channel, and you can watch the whole thing, because it's pretty creepy. It's creepier than the abduction and all the other stuff that you hear about. The fact that these people are in the world doing this stuff right now. But like I always said, I think that, let's say we're here for another, we, the human race, is here for another 100 years or whatever. They're going to be encountering things that would, that we call UFOs and aliens. It's going to be different, because it's going to progress along with the development of civilization and the development of man. That's why we see flying saucers and things coming out of the water that look like, ships and all. And, the Elizabethans would be seeing the little people wearing clothes that look just like them, and little shoes going into the fairy mound and leaving, mushroom circles and everything. I think it's the same thing. I think it's all demonic reality. And it's just been there. It's responding to our curiosity, and it manifests itself the way that we expect to see it. And as soon as science fiction became a thing, and the thing from the other world, the movie, the whole zeitgeist, our entire consciousness basically was made aware that stuff could come out of the sky. And so there we go. even Bigfoot, I think, is just a supernatural manifestation, a supernatural entity that appears in that form. But I don't know, my opinion. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot of unexplained things out there, and we've spoke to scientists, that feel like, oh, it's mind over matter, and you can do this and you can do that with your mind. Well, a lot of it, I don't think is your is your mind. I think there's just so many levels that we don't know about. It's unexplained, and I don't feel that scientists have all the answers. I feel that people are afraid of what they don't understand, and if they can't explain it, they feel it's not real. And that's just not true. It's not true. And if they think they know it all, and they have all the answers, well, maybe they have something coming to them one day they may not want to see, or even if they do see it, they may not believe it.
Well, yeah, you're right. Maybe some people need to see it to believe it, but
they may second guess their own self, though. That's what I'm saying. If you're a dedicated skeptic, nothing, unless something picks you up and throws you across the room, maybe then you'll understand.
Maybe, right. But like I often say, scientism is the most intractable and dogmatic belief system that we have, period. It's because it says this is what it is, and that's it, and there's no other. And if something's influencing that, it's something else that we can explain 100%. They don't, at best, they're playing grab ass with themselves, with each other, because they really don't.
It kind of bothered me, when Mr. Arbot, he had said, when I mentioned the EMF devices in the middle of the floor, he's like, well, it's your human bodies, however he said it, that's setting it off. Well, no, because we know our human bodies can set it off if we're too close to it. But what if it's in the room by itself and we just have our camera on it, and no one's in the room? Right. So we capture it on video. But I was afraid if I would say that, he would say, oh, well, it's mind over matter because you were thinking of it going off in that room.
Don't be afraid. No, don't be afraid. You know how his theory would work in one way. He's a bona fide skeptic, period. But if you had, a Frank's box or an EMF, whatever, sitting in the middle of the room with us in there, like 3 or 4 of us, thinking about getting a result, or getting something to talk. Yeah, our concentrated effort. But that is assuming that everybody's thinking that. Like you could be thinking of the next thing that, like you're the team leader, you could be thinking of the next thing that you're going to move on to. I'm sitting there, maybe let's take, I don't know, India, another team member. She's thinking about something, a different kind of ghost, or the way something reminds her of another investigation. I'm sitting there thinking about those cupcakes that you brought, and I wanted to go back. And you see, but if you, me, and India was sitting there holding hands, looking at the thing, we could make it respond. That's where you cross into not mind control, it's telepathy. You begin to cross into ritual there, because we're going to hold hands, we're going to make a circle, and we're going to look at it, and we're going to whatever. And if we look at it,
investigation, you don't do that. We don't.
No, that's what I'm saying.
We're not trying to use telepathy to try to get our devices to go off.
Yeah, and but that's the margin of error. Everybody would have to be thinking the same thing. And the same thing would have to be make it say something. And everybody's not doing that. If Eileen wants a cupcake or has to go pee, she's not thinking of that. But me, I'm notorious for getting bored, unless crap is like the cremains room that we were in at the funeral home. But, I'm just thinking, go to the bathroom. Yeah, I'm not really sitting there. And that's good, because I'm not thinking about a ghost, and you're not thinking about it. It's just there, and it's doing its thing. And the ghost
we're talking to people, my point of all that is I'm starting to, second guess asking a question, especially if it's to do with our equipment or our devices that we use to try to get, communication, try to get evidence for the client. That's why we're there. Because the client's having problems. We don't just go to any investigation. We help people that are having the worst problems. And like our last guest, he was, when I said something about an apparition photo, he's like, well, how can you get you just can't.
Who you talking about? Jason that we had last week?
How is it possible to get a spirit apparition? It's not possible. And I'm thinking in my head, like, what?
It is possible, and he just omitted his knowledge about condensation, humidity, and natural forces. Because if it's a residual haunting, let's say, that is dependent upon the exact circumstances. If it's something that's trying to manifest, it's not draining anybody's batteries or anything like that, it's going to use the atmosphere around it to condensate into a form. And you can look back into the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of the Witches, where they state that. And they're absolutely, these two people were nuts that wrote it, or these men. But it's true. They say, how does the devil manifest? Everything was the devil. He uses the natural, the air, the humidity, and you can see a mist or you'll see a form. It's like negative light on a camera frame, see? But you can't, don't be afraid to ask questions of, that.
Well,
you can agree to disagree.
Like as long as I've been doing this, I have a whole album, which it took me that many years to get them few pictures of
that's
apparitions.
Just opinion. Yeah, but that's just opinion. Their opinion, and they've never experienced something. But and my challenge to them, my challenge not to Jason so much to Mr. Auerbach, though. Why don't you come up all of this hokey science that you say, it's not designed, and I've even said it really isn't a foolproof design to study supernatural reality. But I would challenge and say, come up with something that either proves or disproves. Come up with something that would be keyed on these experiences that people are having. You're a skeptic, just put the science together, not like the Tennessee wraith chasers with their, Tesla coils and plastic and all this other stuff. Give us technology that you believe would do it, and then let people do it. But that no, because I've experienced it. I know what can be done through occultism. I've experienced that. You know what you know, and you've experienced it, and you have evidence of it. So nobody's got to convince me about what I experienced. But if there's a skeptic who's going to say, you're just then I'll say, give me the science. Then give me the technology. Give us the science so you can prove or disprove.
Tell me that it doesn't exist.
Show me, not tell me, but show me that you're right. If you don't think that, then prove to us what you think it is. Okay. And I can tell you, neither of us are going to sign off the air and go back to the lunatic den, because our pass is up for the weekend. We're not crazy. I'm as down to earth and, completely straightforward as anyone could want. And I know what I've experienced my whole life. I know what I still see, so they can say, blow it off all they want.
But see, that's why people don't show their photos, people that have true photos, because people like that will say, oh, it's a hoax, or it's a glare, or this, when it's true apparition right in front of you, but unless you take the photo yourself, like that I don't bring my photos out. My team have not even seen, that's my personal collection. And I know that I took them photos and I didn't Photoshop and I didn't do this and this, but to show someone else, like a professional, if they would tell me, that's fake, that's Photoshop, I would get angry, because I know I worked hard to get that.
But that's a problem. We shouldn't feel like we'd be exposed to ridicule. And I'm talking on behalf of all the other people in there, jeans and black T-shirts and everybody that's out there in the cemetery right now, whatever. Ridicule is not going to do it. But on the other hand, telling somebody it just doesn't exist is not going to do it. And then thinking everything is paranormal or supernatural isn't going to work either. you know, and I mean, you and I have talked about it like every show this year. And we've had guests on who agree that it's got to be taken to another level in order for it to be validated. And the problem, and you're encountering the feelings too, because it's subjective. So is my experience. I can only talk about my experience. It's subjective. Having somebody come in and say that ain't, you know, and then running the risk of somebody totally disproving it and everybody agreeing, they're never going to do that. There's no team, quote unquote, on TV or otherwise that's going to do that. Period. Not right now. So anyway, we got 1 minute left. Dean, where do they call you? Who are you going to call? You're going to call
Who are you going to call?
Your email.
Yeah, Bernadine, BERNADINE at LSPR-society.com.
Louisiana State Paranormal Research Society.com. You can get me at Google. You can get me anywhere.
Everywhere.
Follow us, please, on YouTube, and follow the United Public Radio Network on YouTube. We have a burgeoning YouTube channel with all your favorite programs. We are also an iHeart partner. And stay tuned for Miss Kathy Bilski, because you're going to get high, and she's going off into the quantum area. Stick around, 2 a.m., get creeped out for Terminus, which apparently everybody likes, because oddly enough, tonight I've picked, we're going off-world. So into space we go. Yeah. So have a good one. Say good night, Dean.
Night, night.
Good night. Have a great weekend.
Some choices are hard. Like, should you choose McDonald's Buttermilk Crispy Tenders or the Buttermilk Crispy Chicken in our signature crafted recipe sandwiches? Well, guess what? You can't make a wrong choice. It's Buttermilk Love, and that's good news. Speaking of good news, now you can get McDonald's 2-piece Buttermilk Crispy Tenders for just $2 from their $1, $2, $3 menu. Cannot be combined with other offer or combo meal. Prices and participation may vary.
Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive's Employee of the Month, 2 months in a row. Leave a message at the... Hi, Jamie. It's me, Jamie. I just had a new idea for our song about the Name Your Price tool. So when it's like, tell us what you want to pay, hey, 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 and the trombone goes, blah, 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 and you say, we'll help you find coverage options to fit your budget. Then we just all do finger snaps while a choir goes, savings coming at ya, savings coming at ya. Yes? No? Maybe? Anyway, see your practice tonight. I got new lyrics for the rap break.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.